Hello all. In this exploration, we're going to look at unburying the bodies, finding the bodies, lifting them up, finding the corpses, untying the frozen parts, right? Unburying the living, the half-dead, right? Because what we're looking at is trauma. And there's a couple of contextual points. We can point to The Body Keeps the Score, a great introduction to trauma and PTSD that is a vast territory of emotional illiteracy until you've uncovered it, unburied it. You can look at Iron John, a book about men. It's obviously more geared towards men by Robert Bly, but about finding the wild man at the bottom of the pool. You can look at, again, The Human Shadow, a little book on the human shadow, a great Audible book, again, Robert Bly. These are a couple of things to point at as we look at the little boy trapped in the bottom of the well. Now, the same is true for any woman, any man. So there's a little girl trapped in the well of every little boy, every man and every woman, right? Because there's a masculine and a feminine side. And the parts that are banished, right? In men, the feminine is banished and shamed. In women, the masculine is a mixed message there, right? Be tough, be strong, do this, be masculine, but also, don't be a bitch, don't be angry, right? That's stuck at the bottom of the well. So, right, what composes the well and how do we get trapped there for decades? And what's important to understand is that as we grow up, much like a tree, you have a tree where every year there's a new ring, right? And so the records, right, The Body Keeps the Score is about the records of the past that are stored in our body, right? If you look at the growth of a tree, right, it grows, it expands every year, but in lush years, in wet years, it grows lusciously, rapidly, and there's big rings. And there's also very, very tough, dry areas. There can be time where, a tree was burned. And then sometimes the bark will grow over the burn, sometimes not, right? And sometimes there's a permanent wound. And that also keeps growing, right? If the tree starts rotting out and gets hollow, it gets another ring, but it doesn't restore the hollowness at the core, right? And so in a similar way, we're all, whatever age we are, I'm 47 as I make this video, and we started out, 0, and the ages keep piling up, and certain personality patterns, certain templates remain the same until a force equal or greater to the original force that shaped the pattern encounters it, right? If you look at momentum, right, you have a bowling ball, you have a pinball, they collide. The pinball goes flying, the bowling ball continues on its original trajectory, and the pinball continues on its new trajectory until inertia or a force equal or greater requires it to change course, right? And so trauma is that bowling ball. And, if you have a house collide with a bowling ball, the house is going to set, the house is going to dictate the trajectory. But the larger and denser the mass, the more other smaller and lighter things bounce off as they encounter that larger, denser mass. And so as an infant, each of us encountered our parents. And through our parents, the cult architecture. We say these things, we don't say these things. We use this language, we don't use that language. We use this currency, We don't use this currency, right? And when you're one surrounded by many in an interdependent culture, right, the one conforms to the many or is outcast or is buried. And that's what happens to each of the parts of us that don't fit into the cult. Now, the conformity or the burial takes place at the level of traumatic shock. So what is the level of traumatic shock? What is trauma, right? Trauma is a large pattern of energy that collides violently, meaning without attunement, without respect, with a smaller pattern of energy in such a way that the identity of the smaller pattern is broken, is shattered, while the larger pattern continues its trajectory. So trauma is the phenomena, the physiological and the psychological phenomena of the encounter between the pinball and the bowling ball. Because when those two collide, right, in a head-on collision, the pinball goes flying. The bowling ball continues on its trajectory. And identity is all about pattern. Your identity, my identity, is a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. When we say I, we are referencing our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And when we recognize ourselves, when we reassemble an idea of ourselves and say, that's me and that isn't me, what we're doing is we're comparing the present moment to the past pattern of identification. Identification is just attachment. The I is strongly attached to the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that it uses to define itself. And in order to maintain a strong identity is a bowling ball in relationship to pinballs. A weak identity is a pinball in relationship to bowling balls, right? So if you don't want to have traumatic collisions on a hour-by-hour basis with bowling balls, and you're a pinball, you have one choice, and that is to attune and follow the lead of the bowling ball, right? So if you willingly cooperate with the bowling balls in your life, you don't go flying in shock. You partner, right? And if you're going a little slow, maybe the bowling ball gives you a boost, right? So if you're a pinball in collusion with, in attunement with the bowling balls in your life, you feel in partnership, you feel one with, you are a cult member of your culture. You do what they do, you say what they do, you eat what they do, etc., and you fit in, right? There's no collision. But as soon as you start saying, I think I'm going to start speaking Japanese in an English-speaking household. Well, there's an instant shock. Stop that and speak English. Go to your room and you start hitting the bowling balls. It's called trauma. And the trouble is, in an insane cult or culture, a child can't do, right? When you have an insane cult or culture is split, right? It says it wants peace, but then it keeps going to war, right? We're a peaceful culture. We just keep going to war. Now be peaceful. Now go to war, right? You can't win, right? We tell the truth in this family, but don't tell mom about this and this. You can't win, right? We value good grades. I just see that you with resentful jealousy every time I see you getting them, right? Don't fight, don't be violent. Real men are tough and defend themselves, right? You can't win, right? And so when you've got bowling balls on both sides clashing in a dysfunctional, what is a dysfunctional? What is an insane, right? Insane just means there's no flow, there's no integrity. I will pay you tomorrow, and I don't. And then I say, no, I never said that. That's dissociative, right? This one is dissociative with this one, and then I'm dissociating with reality by pretending it didn't happen, right? That's 2 levels of insanity, right? And then if I say, no, I never do that, that's 3 levels of insanity, right? Insanity is a dissociation with reality. And a war within oneself. I really want to lose weight, and that's why I'm going to have another slice of pie, right? I'm insane. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm just nurturing myself. You want to lose weight? You're going to eat that pie, right? You want to lose weight and you don't eat the pie? That's sane, right? But, no dessert before dinner. Well, this will be our little, our little secret. You catch mom in the kitchen doing this and that and the other, right? You have to obey the law, says the politician. Then you find them, bribing the police to do this and that, and the other, right? It's insane, right? This is the way it is, and then this is what we're going to do. So a child is stuck in the middle. It's a pinball being volleyed back and forth. And the worst thing is to be volleyed back and forth between both of your parents. You just bounce back and forth and there's no place, right? Go tell your father. I didn't know he was my father. I thought he was your husband. Go tell your father. It's all your fault. Go tell your father I'm not going to do this and this. Well, you tell your mother I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that, right? I thought it was your wife. No, it's your mother, right? It's your fault. Right? So it goes back and forth. So this is trauma. Trauma is the perception of and or the experience of a shattering of the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. When that's shattered, that pattern, like I'm the one who tells the truth and I do the truth, and someone says, if you tell the truth, I'm going to kill your mother. If you tell anyone that I said that, I'm going to kill her as well. Right? Well, I can't deal as a 5-year-old, right? I'm in a dependent, I'm in a codependent, I'm in a dependent relationship with my mother. 5-year-olds do not survive without grown-ups to take care of them. So if someone threatens to take care of what's familiar to you, they're really threatening to destroy your identity, and it's called trauma. I have to change my pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being suddenly and violently out of fear and out of pain and out of shock, because a much larger energy will destroy me or is threatening to destroy me if I don't change. And this one is pushing me to go here, and this one is pushing me to go over here. And then they're both telling me not to tell anyone, right? Don't tell anyone. Don't tell my wife about this. Here's a candy, right? If you do, there'll be trouble. I thought you were the preacher and said, don't talk about that, right? There'll be trouble if you unmask the insanity, right? What do I do? What do I do, right? And, some children who are exposed to constant insanity and constant trauma, they dissociate from their humanity relatively quickly. Their empathy is robbed because they're not being shown empathy. They're being used, abused, tricked, betrayed, manipulated by giants for sociopathic purposes without regard for the terror of the child. You do this and I'll be happy. You do that and go fuck yourself. A child can't deal with that because they're in a dependent relationship with grown-ups, right? And so a child in that training ground that learns basically that they're surrounded by reptiles operating out of the reptilian brain, fight, flight, freeze, and please, out of greed and fear, reptilian protocols, right? A child that is surrounded by reptiles floods their own reptilian brain with blood and learns to navigate the power structure in a reptilian hierarchy. But what has to go in the bag, what has to go in the shadow, is joy, is trust, is empathy, right? You can't be human and be an effective reptile, right? Because your humanity wants to save that little old lady, but the gang leader gave you $1 if you turned her in and beat the shit out of you if you didn't. So you sold your empathic brain. You sold your humanity. The only thing that separates a human being from a reptile is the empathic brain with the capacity to empathize. Right? A crocodile can't empathize. A human can, but a human animal that has been traumatized into regression with the reptilian brain cannot empathize. Or they may hear the signal, the empathic brain may get a little bit of blood, but they sell their soul, they sell their humanity to the snake, right? The snake is called the devil, it's just the reptilian brain. The sociopathic protocol is the reptilian protocol, and it's about survival in a sociopathic and traumatic environment. So you create reptilian environments and put children into them, and they become sociopathic, primarily reptilian, and capable of navigating, right? When you're in reptilian territory, you do the math, and you bend to the largest power. It is basically might is right, right? And this has been the reptilian protocol throughout much of human history. God is power, right? Because it's better to be powerful than powerless. And so might makes right, reptilian. So I was able to kill more of your people than you were willing to and able to kill of my people. So in reptilian territory, I'm right. God was on my side. It's not really God, it's the law of mass, right? The bowling ball always wins when colliding with a pinball, right? 100-mile-an-hour pinball, 100-mile-an-hour bowling ball. There's no question. The bowling ball continues, the pinball goes flying, and might makes right, right? And so if you want to be right, it's very easy. You just figure out what's smaller than you, and you bully that. And you always win. And if you're in might makes right territory, adolescent territory, gang territory, criminal territory, capitalistic territory, right? Because the company that came out and stole all the customers, they're the good company. That's what people want to learn from in a reptilian protocol. You see, you bribe this customer, you do this, you did this, you gave this, you monopolized this, you did this, you threatened these guys with your legal team, and you came out, and now your company's worth $10 billion. And everyone wants to learn your playbook. And the playbook is reptilian. How do we figure out how to successfully knock our competitors flying in a traumatic state that means the death of their business, the death of those family members, so that the best people will come and work for us. And then we can dominate, right? So it's all reptilian, right? And if you're in that environment, right, you get good at measuring who's strong, and it's called politics. You align with the strongest one. But what's lost in there is the helpless human being. The little boy, the little girl, the innocent one that just wants love because it existed, that once thought that it was valuable because it existed. You see, every 2-year-old knows it's innately valuable because it exists. It cries when it wants things. It expects people to come immediately. It takes a few years to beat that out of the 2-year-old to where they go silent and shut down rather than cry because it conserves energy, and they realize they're in a sociopathic environment that doesn't care about the helplessness of an infant's cry. It cares about the TV. It cares about this. It cares about that. So what trauma does when you're in a dependent relationship, as every child is with the grown-up world, what trauma does is it shapes the new identity. It's called a traumatic identity. It's called a coping mechanism, right? You know, a stranger said, "Come here, little boy. Now I'm going to do this and this and this." And then you told mom, a stranger said, "Do this and this," and then she hit you and said, "Don't ever do this, you dumb idiot," right? And both of those were traumatic events, right? I couldn't do anything. I was in a helpless state, right? I didn't know that man would put his penis in my butt. Who knew? People said, pay respect to your elders, so I was doing what I was told, right? And I never knew mom would have a fit about it. And I never knew I'd be beaten up and told not to tell anyone. And we're not going to ever talk about this again. And then we're going to say, you know, don't ever lie, follow the 10 Commandments. And it's like, I thought you said we shouldn't ever talk about. Right? You get a look, and you know that look, right? It's the look that stops an elephant, a mature elephant, from breaking its bonds, right? When there's a knife on the ear, when there's a spur, when the rope cuts into the foot of a baby elephant that's separated from their mother, they eventually learn that their instinctual pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, which is to find mom at all costs and be safe, is now going to kill them. Because it's going to wear the rope around their leg raw, and then they're going to die of infection. And they're going to die in a miserable amount of pain. And it's not going to work. And so the new identity, the new pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being forms to survive in a reptilian environment, right? Because a human being, an empathic person, doesn't separate a baby elephant from his mother to make a few bucks, right? Now you have selective empathy, right? In a slightly competent world, you have selective empathy. Well, I need to make money to provide for my family. I care about them. I don't care about the elephant and their family, and I don't care about other people. So you have selective humanity. I'll be a human being with my grandmother. I'll be a gang leader with the kids on the street. Selective empathy, right? Little bit of humanity here and there, supported by reptilian architecture. Well, every time who you authentically are and are developing to be is hit with a bowling ball, it's a traumatic event. It is an event where one dissociates from one's own body, from one's own identity. One dissociates, puts in the clutch, and says, okay, I thought I was this person and I was going to hold out and this and that and the other, right? But I'm going flying, right? I thought this was reality, and I thought that I had influence of reality, right? The pinball always starts out aiming where it wants to aim and thinking, and I'm going to just hold out, and that's what I'm going to do, right? But with enough bowling ball collisions and knocking it out of the way, the pinball loses its self or inner orientation and starts looking for what's the next bowling ball that's going to hit me, and I'll just do that ahead of time so I don't have to get knocked as well as thrown off my original trajectory. But that's well, okay, I guess it isn't unfair because I don't want to be beaten, right? It was unfair when I could shout and scream and the abuser stopped hitting me. Then it was unfair, and unfair was the right thing to pursue. Now, I guess I deserve to be beaten, and I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to be beaten even more, right? And so this is how the misshapen, deformed, traumatized, fear-based, shame-based patterns of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being form in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old. And how they get buried is when trauma is used as a threat to silence the voice, when willful ignorance, and in many cases criminal negligence, is piled on top of that silence. And everyone agrees, out of fear of trauma, not to talk about the little boy in the well, right? So it's worth, so how does a 5-year-old get locked down in a well, unloved, forgotten for decades, unwanted, shamed, humiliated, and told on no uncertain terms under pain of trauma, do not show your face, not at the party, not in bed, not at the company. Where does he? Just nowhere. Just don't emerge from the bag, from the bottom of that well. How does it happen, right? Well, emotional states, psychological states are viral in nature. And the worst possible states are helplessness, fear, pain, loneliness, powerlessness, and overwhelm. If you are alone, filled with pain, lonely, filled with shame, it's all your fault. Right? And you're helpless, and there's nothing you can do about it. You are in the worst state a human being can experience. And in a psychologically illiterate culture, our own, in a parentally illiterate culture, right? You can go through every institution of the cult and not receive a single hour of competent parenting training. But anyone can have a kid regardless of how fucked up their family has been for generations, regardless of how normal and incompetent their family has been for generations. You want to have a kid? Oh, that's fine. If you want to drive a car, well, cars are important. You got to get a license, right? You want to fly a plane? Well, planes are expensive. You got to get a license. But kids are free. So have at it, right? Do your best. Good job. We all know it's tough, right? Because we refuse to learn anything, right? We could spend 4 hours a day in high school preparing to be good parents and deprogram the last 1,000 years of stupidity, but that would be intelligent. There's always the problem, right? Because it takes a certain amount of intelligence to know that you're stupid, and before you realize you're stupid, you have no basis to start becoming educated, right? If you say, I don't know anything and this is important, then you can start learning, right? But if you're really, really dumb, you think you know what you're too dumb to realize you don't know that you don't know, right? And so you and more importantly, your child is screwed, just like you were, right? Well, I survived. I'm still alive, right? I may be crazy, maybe an addict, maybe driving people up the wall, right? May need 2 or 3 beers a day just to manage the feelings that come up, but worked for me. So, have a child, go right ahead, right? The responsible thing to do. So how does a child get forgotten and frozen, right? Well, when you understand that human states are viral in nature, and you understand that being all alone, being lonely and isolated is the worst. Like if you're in enormous pain and you're surrounded by a group of friends, that pain is 5 times easier to deal with if they know what they're doing, right? If they're emotionally illiterate, shame-based, and just tell you to not feel this and you can't talk and they're clueless, you could feel more lonely. But if you actually have someone with a little bit of competence who cares, who listens, who asks how they can help, who you can cry with, etc., you feel better. Number one. Number two, you're not in trauma, because when you're in massive amounts of pain that you've never felt before and no one's there to help you, you do not know if you will survive, right? I don't know if I'm going to be around a year from now, 2 years from now. Maybe I can't work in this amount of pain. I don't know, right? I've never done it before. And if you've got no outside support that says, we'll get you through this, you're in trauma simply by being in that amount of newness and that amount of pain, because your survival is in jeopardy. Because you recognize, I don't know what I'm doing. The people around me don't know what I'm doing and don't know what they're doing. And this could kill me. So there is an innate drive to cling and hang on to other people when you're in trauma, when you're in a desperate state, right? Often even abused children will go home when they're broken, things fail. Because even if they know they're going to be humiliated and abused, they just want to be able to have someone understand them enough and go back to familiar territory. And they know what it's like to be humiliated. They know what it's like to be rejected, because it's been happening for decades, right, with their family members. And so they crawl back home to feel safe in the family, safe in the familiar, even if it's a familiar abuse. So there is that impulse. And so a parent has a leverage that, with someone that's under the age of 5, a parent can transfer all of their fear, all of their hate, all of their helplessness, and the child can't stop it. The child will start wailing uncontrollably. The child will curl up in a little ball. The child will be terrified and run away, right? So in terms of feeling less lonely, it is an instinct with people who are overwhelmed in a state of loneliness to give pain, some of their pain, to their children, right? And so they do. They've been doing it for thousands of years, right? And it's called intergenerational abuse cycles, right? When I feel shame and are lonely and this and that and the other, I have sex with my kids and I tell them not to talk about it. Then everyone else in the cult shames people for being incest survivors. And the parent feels better, right? Now the kid knows what it was like to be, to be me, right? Because I'm carrying a dirty secret, right? When my parents did that to me, when my uncle did that to me, nobody's helped me get out of it either. So I'm just going to give that to my kid. And now somebody knows how I feel. And now when I feel terrified and small, I just look at my kid's face. And it's like, you feel terrified and small too. I'm not alone. There's a dissemination of the load. It feels better for a brief period of time. The powerlessness is also, right? I'm powerful. Look what I just did to my kid. I made them feel exactly how I feel, right? I can't do anything at work. Can't do anything with the government. When they bully me, when they do this, but, when I bully my kid, by golly, he feels as shitty as I do. And now I'm not alone anymore, and I feel a little bit more powerful. I feel a little better, right? And the kid gets this, right? The kid understands. With the little bit of humanity that's left in them, they understand that taking the shame, taking the fear that's given to them makes Dad calm down. He's not as furious. He's not as lonely, right? Right? Okay, so I'll do that, Dad. I'll get lonely and I'll get scared, right? And what seems to really upset you is my spontaneous exuberance. This is not a happy world. Stop doing all these things I didn't expect. Now go to your room. Okay, Dad. Now he's happy, right? Now he's happy. Now that I'm shocked, now that I'm shamed, now that I'm bad, now that I know I'm unlovable, he's happy, right? Because he's got control. And I know that Dad wants me to feel this way, that Dad will be happy if I feel this way. If I feel small and unlovable, and if I just sit in the corner crying, maybe Dad will give me a hug after the phone call. After he's done the paperwork or after he's got a raise in 3 months, he's going to say, I've been a bit of a jerk. Sorry about that, kid, but you're all right, right? But if I kept being exuberant and he might have killed me. He might have never forgiven me, right? And then Dad just moves on. He doesn't go back and reassociate the body tissue. He doesn't understand that's a traumatic memory because he's a traumatically illiterate cult member of a traumatically illiterate culture that is committed to willful ignorance. Let's go to school and learn trigonometry. It's going to be useful. Don't learn trauma. It's not a manly thing to do. Right? Okay, let's all be culturally illiterate together, right? That's what it means to be part of this cult. Be tough, right? We all know it's not working, but we all pretend it works, and that's what makes us a cult, right? That's what makes us a crazy cult, an insane cult, a dysfunctional cult, a schizophrenic cult, right? But hopefully there'll be a few people in our cult that will agree to be the schizophrenics and be the crazy ones so we can pretend it's not us, right? And scapegoat them. We'll drive them more crazy than we feel, and when they're totally crazy, it won't, deflect the attention from us, right? So the little boy gets that Dad wants him to be hurt, that he is unlovable, that he is unloved. He also gets that spontaneous results in hitting, don't move, don't speak, don't think, right? And he also gets that if he speaks up and says, this is wrong, that he gets hit with hate and rage again. And so he says, it's all my fault. And he also gets that he is in a dependent relationship with these giants. And that it's his job to figure out how to comply, how to not make noise. And so he ties himself up. He says, I won't speak because I'm afraid of being beaten. I won't protest because I don't want Dad to look bad and take it out on me. I won't be visible because that makes Dad angry. He feels guilty if he realized how much he hurt me, so I'll put on a smile and say, no, it's fine, Dad. Then Dad brightens up. That's what he wanted to hear. He didn't want to hear that I'm going to be depressed for 40 years. He didn't want to hear that I'm broken, that I feel unlovable, that I will feel shock and disorientation anytime someone tries to love me for the rest of my life because I'm loyal to Dad. I don't want him to hit me. He doesn't want to hear that. He wants to hear that he can abuse the shit out of his kid. But his kid is tough. No problem, Dad. You're a good dad. Oh, I feel great. Here, let me give you a pizza, right? And you get the pizza and you go crazy, right? Because you just told Dad what he wanted to hear and you believed it because he said you were good, right? So the cloak goes on, the camouflage. Now remember, kid, hide under this cloak because Dad will feel guilty if he sees the state you're in inside under this cloak. So put on this cloak, pretend everything's great, And then why should we go back and solve something, right? If it's great. Let's put a little soil in this, right? We don't need to dredge up the past. It's a happy past, after all, where everything is great. Dad likes us on condition that we lie and don't have helpless feelings and don't feel terrified and don't feel resentment and don't feel hate and don't feel hurt and don't feel broken, right? The years go on then, right? Who do they want in high school? They want confident, smart, attractive people. They don't want broken people. No. Are you a broken person? Yes. Get out of here then. We're going to hurt you. We're going to pick on you and we'll break you some more. How about you? Are any of you broken? No, I have a great life, right? Gosh, I've got to hide everything from here, right? And the dirt gets on there, right? The years go by and you get to work, right? You get to work. Do you have a positive attitude about selling staplers? Oh, I was kind of hoping to be an architect. Well, get out of here. Next interview. Do you have a positive attitude about selling Post-it notes? You know what? Now that you mention it, I do. I do. From the time I was 5 years old, I remember saying, Daddy, I want to sell Post-it notes. I want to cut down trees, make them into Post-it notes, and I believe in a vision, a Post-it note in every home, right? Well, you're just the kind of person we've been wanting to hire. You might even get a raise and go up to senior management now that you've admitted, right? Don't be ashamed. We're just like you. We believe in Post-it notes as well, right? Right. So you learn, okay, stay down there, right? Don't tell the truth. It's not going to work out, right? You get promoted, you become a senior management. It's kind of sickening, it's kind of depressing. Why? Because you're suffocating down in the bottom of a well that's been filled in with lies and garbage. Right? But your wife says, well, you're going to get a pension if you just hang in there. What's not so bad? Post-it notes. There are worse jobs. Who's going to hire you at this age, right? Now you're a manager, right? Now you're making other people lie and pretend they're interested in Post-it notes and have a positive attitude and all that, right? You're not into it. They're not into it, right? But, I don't want to lose my house. I don't want my wife to complain. Why are you unemployed? Why couldn't you have just, Post-it notes were too good for you, right? So you get up to the present time. How you doing today? Fine. Sounds good to me, right? I'm not doing fine either, but let's not get into it, right? So 40 years have gone by. And down in the bottom is a frozen, dissociated, terrified, unlovable kid who believes that being small and being hurt and not making a noise and not being spontaneous and not doing anything original or telling the truth is the only thing that's going to make Dad not hit him. It's the only thing not going to make Dad love him. And he hasn't grown up because he's been isolated, right? When you isolate someone down the bottom of a well, you come back 40 years later and you say, did you see the moon landing? Oh, no, I've been down the bottom of a well. You see what money we're making these? No, I didn't know that, right? I'm still in the place where, If I move, Dad's going to hit me. Or if I tell Mom it's going to be my fault if they break up and I don't have any protectors. I'm still trying to figure out how I tell the truth and don't tell Mom and have a little secret and don't keep secrets. I'm still trying to figure that out, right? Because nobody's helped me. They've just told me they're going to hit me. I'm going to lose who I am. I'm terrified of the unknown. I'm terrified of change. The bottom of this well. I don't want to go back there because it's the worst feelings I ever felt. Stay down there, kid. I don't want to come near you. Get away from me, kid. Don't come up. Now I'm the abusive parent, shaming my own feelings, shaming my own memories, dissociating, alienating. I don't want to tell the truth. I don't want to let anyone in. And my kids that are starting to tell me the truth, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to hear it. So I'm going to put them down in the bottom of the well. It may be a different well, right? Go play with your fucking iPad. You're a disappointment. Don't come out of your room until you're positive. There's different kinds of wells. Basically, who you are is not okay. And I don't want to see you again. And I have contempt and disgust for you unless you show me something you're not. That I want you to feel, right? I want to be able to give you a good fucking slap and have a smile on your face. Smile, kid, or I'll hit you. You fucking loser. Right? That's what I want. That's putting my kid in the hole. And pretending that that doesn't have spirit-crushing psychological damage is throwing dirt on top and burying them there. It's burying the evidence, basically. Leaving the body, right? Nobody can see the body, right? There's no well here. We live a happy family, right? Well, we have happy families all over the place, drinking themselves to stupidity, smoking themselves to distraction, cramming through media to avoid that kid in the bottom of the well. Maybe if I eat a bit more, I won't have to listen to him scream. Because that's what everyone else around me wants, right? How are you today, Gladys? I'm wonderful. Let me eat another thing so I don't have to tell the truth. Right? I'm not wonderful at all. I don't know how. I'm having troubling dreams. It seems like there's some dark part. We'll have another biscuit and go to the gym and we'll just power on through this, right? Let's just leave the kid down underground, right? So that kid gets lonely, terrified. Every day that goes by, it confirms in a self-affirming loop that I'm not lovable because no one wants to love me, including me. I want to bury them because I don't want it to be associated with that troubled child. Don't come over to the house. My kid's different. I don't want anyone to see my parents, so let's meet out, pretend everything's wonderful, right? Because I know you will not accept me. If you are sociopathic, you won't accept me as I am. If you see that I have problems, you'll dissociate from me. You won't help. So, no, problems? No, I don't have any baggage. I buried it all. With a nice smile. I'm just easygoing, right? Not from digging out the graves and doing an autopsy and integrating a little bit of intelligence, but by piling more dirt on, right? So feelings, nah. Let's just have a little cocaine, a little casual sex, a little vodka to take the edge off, talk about a little gossip and shame over there and shame over there. Did you hear how fucked up these people are? No, tell me about it. It's much more interesting than digging up the corpses in my family history. Oh, they're disgusting. Oh. And while we're thinking inside, that was my mom, that was me, that was things. So it's a very fragile illusion. So what do? Right? Sometime before the age of 50, you're going to be asked to face, your body is going to bring up the sensations you've been running from, hiding from, lying about, completely dissociated from. Your body is going to tell you, hey, there's going to be a knock on the door. And there's going to be a child in rags, a frightened child, a lonely child, an animalistic child, a wild child, an uncultured child. It's there at the door, right? And if you're shame-based and fear-based, your answer may be here. Here's a few $100. Now, go hide, right? Don't come around here. I don't want anyone to know. Right? People think I'm successful, right? Because I became a good model of my cult. Just go away, right? Maybe you'll hire a hitman, right? Get that crazy relative, tie him up, kidnap, get him to another island, get him drunk, just get him. I don't want him showing up in my campaign. Oh, God. It's that crazy lover I lied to and betrayed and did this and got pregnant and, oh, she's going to ruin my marriage. Go, what do I have to do? Go away. Go away. Oh, I'm having a great day. I'm Mr. Perfect, who doesn't have anything to hide, right? Sometime before age 50, there will be a knock on the door. And the question is, do we perpetuate the intergenerational abuse by burying it and becoming a prisoner of hiding it, right? Because how do you get consumed? You spend more and more of your energy burying and suppressing and denying something, and it consumes you, and you become more and more of it. Or you welcome it, you bless it, you love it, you understand it, you take the time it takes to see it, you help it walk out of the door with dignity, you forgive yourself and it, and welcome it home. And you become whole, you become human, you become free, you become evolutionarily useful, right? What kind of an evolutionary protocol is it? Take a third of your energy, dig a big hole in the ground and bury it, right? I think nuclear waste is good for the planet. Do you think psychological waste is good for the earth or our bodies? You're nuts, right? What's evolutionary is to take something that your relatives were too dumb to know what to do with and to evolve your paradigm, your mode of thinking to a point where what once seemed like the worst possible thing, to be protected at all costs because it might kill you in a dysfunctional environment, is now the most amazing source of growth, creativity, and vitality that you've ever known. That's evolution, where you bring beauty, truth, and goodness into the world, fueled by what your family has been hiding for 10,000 years. That's evolution. Every third woman in this family hears voices and has visions and does this. Right? We don't want them burned at the stake, so we don't talk about it, right? When that becomes creative genius and welcomed and honored for its potential and apologized to. We're sorry we've put you in a dysfunctional cult that doesn't know how to honor large swaths of its own potential. So it hides and shames and gossips and punishes people who are different. We're sorry. We're dumb, and now we're smart enough to realize that we were dumb. And so we're going to start doing something about it. We're dumb, so it won't be very fast, and don't expect too much. Right? It wouldn't be very smart to expect a lot from a dumb culture, but, right? So if you do, well, you're dumb too, right? Well, I mean, join the club, right? You're in a cult. It's a dumb cult. So dumb people will expect other dumb people to grow and change rapidly and be shocked that they don't, right? A smart person doesn't expect a lot from a dumb person, right? But also doesn't blame and shame the dumb person for growing up in a dumb cult, right? Not a single fucking competent hour of traumatic literacy in 40 years. Pretty dumb, right? When trauma is one of the major, it's one of the top three. You know, if you look at the root orientation of everything that is and is not happening in our cult, in our world, in our species, trauma is dictating 30% of the harm that is unnecessarily being done to ourselves and our ecology, and 30% of why perfectly obvious, reasonable, intelligent things are not being done. A third of our reality is being governed by traumatic protocols in a cult that has one of its main agendas to not talk about and hide everything that's traumatic, minimize it, discount it, where we're morons, right? And of course, if we're morons, we'll expect that to change instantly, right? But if we're intelligent, you wouldn't expect morons to change rapidly. You'd say, right, if I'm surrounded by morons, I wonder how many ways I'd have to make a difference in this and this and this for a moron to figure this out. Right? And it's and if you look a little deeper, they're not actually morons. They're very intelligent children who learned that their parents would traumatize them if they looked too deeply at the family's traumatic history and patterns. And so they were actually very smart to maintain traumatic illiteracy to please shame-based parents in a dysfunctional cult that might have killed them if the child had been too persistent at bringing up the unresolved trauma of their parents, right? So then people suddenly become smart again, right? You get really smart, you start realizing other people are smart too. You just didn't have the whole picture because you weren't very smart either, right? So now everyone becomes smart again, right? And so now you just have to help smart people who learned traumatic messages that discussing and exploring trauma and secrets would kill them. And their bodies now have to learn that not talking about it is actually and has been killing them for decades, right? And so that takes patience and skill, right? So that's how we get down in the bottom of the well. And there are parts of ourselves, there are parts of myself where no adult has ever loved and visited them and told them it's okay to come out of hiding, to start speaking again, right? If the last thing they got was don't talk back or I will destroy your pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, and hate you, and you're 5 years old in a dependent relationship with that bully, with that grown-up, right? Then you look in and say, anything I can do to help myself, and you get silence, right? Because that 5-year-old is doing what he was told. Everything's fine. Everything's fine, right? So you actually have to make an effort and go in there and say, it doesn't look fine. Who tied you up here? Right? When's the last time you've eaten? Who did this to you? What did they do? I'm just going to be here with you. I'm going to sit in this dark well. I'm going to sit in this grave with you and let you know by my presence that this is not hopeless, because I am not hopeless. This is not helpless, because I'm here to help. That you are not unlovable, because I'm here loving you with my presence. That you're not alone, because I'm here. You're the person, you're the part of me that I would like to be with more than any other part. And that's why I'm here. I'm not crazy, you see? The kids heard too much craziness. I'm separating from you and abandoning you for my family. I'm going off to work and doing everything but spend time with you because I'm a family man. I abandon my family for my family, right? 5-year-old can't make sense of that bullshit. You're the most important thing to me, and here I am, and here I am still, and I've got lots of time for you. Well, that makes sense, right? Daddy puts me as the last person in his life, and then he feels guilty if I point that out and hates me even more. And so I'll go crazy to make Daddy happy as he abandons me chronically for decades. Because I don't want him hating me as well as abandoning me. You feeling good, son? Oh, yeah, yes, Daddy. Feeling good. That's my boy. Now let me abandon you. Now you keep that up and I'll buy you a car. Right? Okay, Dad. If I tell you how lonely I am, you won't? Yeah, you ungrateful shit. Don't you realize I'm doing all this for you? Now fuck off, and I'm going to go have an affair with the secretary. Right? But if you're there, right? Why does a 5-year-old know they're unlovable? Well, they're in massive amounts of trauma and pain. They're asked to sit indefinitely alone in their room. They're not allowed out unless they lie about it. Now, you come back when you can apologize to the giant who bullied you for having feelings that your body produced when being abused by this bully. When you can do that, you can come out. Otherwise, go fuck yourself. We don't want sane people around here. Right? You apologize to your father, right? Well, you're sitting there with that part. You're not off with the cult. You're not off trying to make more money you don't need and don't want. You're not trying to look good to people you don't care about. You're there with them. If you hang out long enough, the message gets through. I am valuable. You could be anywhere, and you're here with me. You're not trying to blame me. Why have you stayed in this well for so? Why have you been buried? Why didn't you tell me? Right? These are the kind of bullshits that traumatically illiterate people do, right? Abused, regressed women in abusive relationships, blame the women. Blame the children. They don't look at the regression. They don't look at the trauma. They don't look at the fact that the very fact that they will blame someone for being abused for years and not speaking up about it is exactly why they don't speak up about it. Because they don't want to be shamed as well as abused, as well as misunderstood, and then criticized, and then dissociated and blamed for the pain they could never deal with. After being shaped into flinching when they were 5, right? You see, elephants don't break the chains when they're adults because they're broken when they're 5. And every time they try to move their foot, they fear death, and their body tells them that they're going to get seriously hurt, so they don't do it. They internalize the terror of past pains, and now they stay prisoners themselves. It's no different from emotionally illiterate people in a psychologically illiterate environment that shame people for having bad feelings? I thought feelings were data points that tell you what's going on so you can respond. I didn't know they were bad data. Don't tell me that. Get that out of here, right? Kill the messenger, right? Idiot galore. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that, right? Says the boss driving their company over a cliff. I want to hear about competition, right? I want to learn about electric vehicles, right? We're just going to keep polluting indefinitely. The public doesn't want an electric car, right? Don't tell me that. Get lost, right? So you drive over a cliff, right? What are you going to do? Suddenly that's the only car being made, right? And you're not making it. So we all have children at the bottom of a well. And they're there because giants put them there. And they're there because giants left them there. And they're there because we and other giants shamed them for showing emotions on their face, in their behavior. If we hurt ourselves because we know that we're bad and unlovable and we don't deserve this, people shame us. They don't read a book on trauma and help disseminate the load that gets piled on to a young body that's not strong enough to live. And this is our work. It's been our work for at least 50 years as a cult, as a culture, making little headwinds. Maybe in 300 years, we'll be relatively culturally, emotionally, traumatically literate. A nice improvement to at least know what you're doing. Go spend time with one of those broken, lonely, frightened little kids inside. Because once you see them blossom, once you let them know that they're all right, once you watch them grow and stop spending energy to bury them, you may have the courage to love a child on the outside, to stand up for someone in your neighborhood. Peace be with you.